Hi, I'm John Armato with another Easy Jazz Spotlight for Easy Jazz FM. And today I'm spending time with Libby York, who is a veteran of some of the country's most prestigious jazz clubs and a recording artist with 5 albums to her names, including her latest, Dreamland, which has consistently been hanging out in the top 10 on the Jazz Week charts, and which we'll talk about today. The New York Times calls Libby a jazz singer of cool composure and artful subtlety. And 10 years ago, Downbeat magazine gave a 4-star review to Libby's then latest album, Sunday in New York, describing it as stylish and cosmopolitan with a broad streak of lush life urbanity. Elegant descriptions, to say the least. For my money, Libby is a storytelling vocalist, deeply connected to the lyrics and void of any distracting stylistic embellishments. She shapes each line very gently, very respectfully, and very personally, while always swinging and keeping things relaxed. Throughout a 4-decade career, Libby has recorded and performed around the country and around the world with jazz luminaries like John DiMartino, Warren Vichet, Russell Malone, the great Frank West, and many more. It's quite a resume for a singer who didn't start her career until she was 35, which I believe, given what an extraordinary singer she is, means she wasted the first 34 years. I've had the privilege of knowing Libby for a few of those years. She's a delightful relative of one of my closest friends, and I've also been fortunate to work with her on the bandstand. I'm glad you'll get to know her today, too. So let's get started. Libby York, welcome.
Thank you, John. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Libby. It's always a pleasure when we get a chance to chat. I recall when we worked together here in Sacramento a few years ago, I think I enjoyed our conversations and the stories you shared as much as I did the music. So it's always good to be with you. I want to start with a piece of advice you once gave me. When I was working on my album, The Drummer Loves Ballads, a few years ago, you gave me a great piece of advice on what it means to record an album. And I have a tendency to sort of get in my head and get anxious. And he said, remember, it's just a moment in time. It's not your whole career. So I'm curious what your new album, Dreamland, means to you when you think about it as a moment in time.
Yeah, I forget who told me that, but it helps take the pressure off when you're feeling like you're in the studio making your magnum opus or whatever. This is
Exactly
shot of that moment in time. This record was so special to me because Randy Napoleon and Rodney Whitaker, we are on the faculty at Michigan State. Rodney's head of the jazz department there. And so we recorded up in Lansing, Michigan. And, just connected, just really connected. And for me, well, this was the 5th time I've been in the studio producing my own project. I was just very aware of the fact that the mic is like whispering into a listener's ear. It's so intimate and it's so different from performing live. So I was kind of very aware of that when we made, and also it was kind of a post-pandemic offering, and it's very soft, and I wasn't trying to beat anybody over the head with this music. It was more,
you make me think of the stories that have been told over the years about what the real innovation was that Bing Crosby brought to then popular music, which was, coming out of the Rudy Valley days with the megaphones and everything, and finally harnessing the power of the microphone for intimacy and not shouting into it and being right in the listener's ears. I think that kind of intimacy is speaks to the sort of relaxed and minimalist mood that I kind of get from the album. I think of it as a minimalist recording. We drummers often say we spend the first half of our careers trying to figure out ways to put more notes in, and then the second half of our career is trying to take notes out. Right. It seems to me there's no unnecessary notes in your singing or in this album. It feels spare, but not empty.
Thank you. That's great. It's been so rewarding, really, to to see how well the record is done and that people are responding to it. You know, you never know. You do what you want to do at the moment, and you don't know ahead of time how it's going to be received. So
well, and you've got the ensemble so stripped down. You know, it's a little bit of drums on a few tunes, but guitar and bass and voice for most of the album. Jazz is such an interactive genre, and the smaller the group, the more exposed each player is. That can be sort of a dangerous thing. You know, you can find gaps, but this sounds full and complete. And you know, part of that I'm sure is testament to the players. But did you have a specific sound in mind that you were going for, or references from classic recordings you had heard that you wanted to bring into this, or was this just the way it came about?
It's funny, somebody mentioned the Chet Baker's trio was guitar, bass, and vocal. Of course, he played horn on it too.
Right.
It kind of was more the players I wanted to work with. And yeah, I just felt like keeping it simple was the way to go this time. And it is a little more exposed, you know. But I mean, there's bass and voice choruses. Rodney is just so great. And Randy is. I had met Randy at the Jazz Showcase in Chicago when he was working with Freddie Cole, who he was with from Freddie was a real mentor to Randy. And we started talking about then, you know, recording. And maybe a few years later, this came about. So it's funny of the story, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, and you mentioned that sort of being fitting coming out of the pandemic, that sort of intimate sort of feel. You know, when I think about my personal experiences, I feel like I think I've teared up at more live music after the pandemic than I ever did before, and that's saying something because I cry easily at music. But you know, what did what did the lockdown do to you in terms of affecting your creativity? And you know, how must it feel to be back in front of real audiences with real music these days?
Boy, it was an eye opener, I think, to a lot of us to suddenly have all the stages dark, no clubs, you know, no music. It made me appreciate more than ever how valuable this art form is and how much I wanted to continue participating in it. I remember going to see The Music Man on Broadway when we were all still masked up. And as soon as they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Winter Garden Theater," I was just like crying behind my mask, you know. The audience was just going nuts. And I mean, this is part of life. The performing arts are part of life that are so valuable. And if anything, I think the dark stages helped me realize that all over again, you know.
Yeah, that's profound, and I understand that. You know, there's a quality to your personal style, not just on this album, but on everything I've heard you do, that I think is especially fitting for this period of time that we're sort of talking about here, where, you know, the pandemic, I would say, created a lot of maybe depression, certainly, but also tension, anxiety, a lot of uncertainty. There's a quality of relaxation and reassurance in the way that you sing, as I hear you. You know, there's not many singers, in my opinion, who really take their time with a song or with a lyric. You know, Carmen McRae was like that, in my opinion. Shirley Horn maybe is the avatar of that. I mean, you could drive a truck through some of her spaces, you know. But I think of that with you too, Libby. Your tempos, your phrasing, you never seem in a hurry. And I always feel like that lets the lyrics sort of bloom a little bit and the music shine through. Are you really that relaxed as a person, or is this something that you consciously developed stylistically?
I wouldn't say consciously, but maybe with maturity as we continue to do what we do, I guess I definitely feel more relaxed. My favorite Shirley Horn quote is she told at a concert. Someone asked her, Miss Horn, why do you do your songs so slowly? And she said, because that's how long it takes. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. I hadn't heard that before. I love that.
Shirley Horn tempo. If we were talking about this recently, because the great Carol Sloan passed recently, and she could take a ballad at a glacial tempo, and you'd be on the edge of your chair as if it were the fascinating story you've ever heard. That is, she was a master class in how to do that. And I think it's just staying present in the lyric. You're telling a story.
Yeah.
When up in Michigan, Rodney had me come do a master class with one of his jazz groups, and they've got some kick-ass players up there. One of the things I told them was learn the lyrics to the songs, and I saw some eyes go open, like, what? We have to lyrics. These songs are about something. I always tell Bill Charlap, when he plays the piano, I can hear the lyrics because he knows what the song is about, even though there's nobody singing lyrics.
Right. Isn't that beautiful? And I love Bill Sharp. I mean, he's a dream piano player for me. I recall stories about Hal Blaine, the great studio drummer. Always said that his first task was to listen to and learn the lyrics, because his role as a drummer was to interpret that story, which I do think is unusual among non-singers. That's a wonderful thing. You mentioned, sort of a masterclass. Speaking of masterclass influences, you had a chance to study with Abby Lincoln for a period of time. And I'm just sort of amazed to even say that out loud, because I think of Abby Lincoln as sort of this almost mystical master of our art, and to just even be in her presence seems like it would have been overwhelming. Tell me how that came about, how long you spent with her, and what you have retained from that experience.
Yeah, really such a great experience. This was in the early 80s in New York. There was a woman who's still around, Kobe Narita, organized a bunch of jazz events. And this was a workshop, New Discoveries of 1982 or whatever it was. And the trio that we were working with was Harold Mayburn on piano, Jamil Nasser on the bass, and Frank Gant on the drums. So, for a beginning singer, the bar was set very high.
Yeah.
A trio was supposed to sound. And Abby was one of our teachers. And I remember for our final concert, I did Something Cool, which is on the new record. She said, you did that very well, and just coming from Abby. And she told me, pick a spot in the room that you're telling that story to. Don't look in the eyes of a real person, but in your mind, you've got a spot where you're telling the story. And I still use that. She was so.
Is that right?
And and we put Throw It Away on this record, which is her composition.
I was going to bring that up, because I came to that tune late, only a few years ago, that I run across her recording of her composition, and the tune just blew me away. I mean, it's beautiful in composition, but it's also so just profound lyrically. Has that been a part of your repertoire for a while then? Yeah,
for quite a while. And, it's about throwing the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes.
Right.
And I found these magic words in a magic book, and one of the hexagrams, just throw it away. So, and I've used the I Ching over the years as well. And, no matter what hexagram you throw, there's something to be learned from this. And so that resonates with me. And it's so many of the songs, in the Great American Songbook are about romantic love, which is wonderful.
Right.
I also like songs that are kind of about a bigger sense of love and life, and Throw It Away is one like that.
Talking about different tunes and what you like, one of the things when we did that gig together in Sacramento, one of the things that became immediately apparent to me is that you have exquisite taste in material. And I love playing all the great American songbook stuff. There's so many great compositions that have become standards, but you don't just do the usual suspects. Your sets are peppered with these lesser known or unusual compositions that are just so much fun to play. As a sideman, it keeps things fresh, but you also give the audience something new with those. I think so. On this album, you've got Rhode Island is Famous for You, which is not a tune that I think a lot of people routinely hear. Mountain Greenery made me smile when it came up when I was listening to your album. I first heard that, believe it or not, on the old Dick Van Dyke Show. The Rob and Laura characters actually performed that at a little show.
Look that up.
Yeah, it's really fun. And I was just a kid, but I've always been a nerd for this music. I fell in love with it early, and I remember distinctly as a little kid, think, what is the song? And I've loved Mountain Greenery since then, but you never hear it. So I'm curious, is it just a matter of you like what you like and that's what you do, or are you intentionally saying, hey, here's something that's needs to be dusted off that hasn't been in the light enough for our audiences? How do you go about making the decisions on your material?
Yeah, it's more I like what I like, and one of the great things about creating your own act all these years is I haven't had anybody telling me I had to sing a certain song, except for my very first gig in New York, which was with a big band, Swing Street. And, I was the chick singer, and you get up and do your one. Don't get around much anymore or something, which was great.
Right.
Training and experience. But I guess I've just always gravitated to some of these songs that aren't done a lot. And what is the story and how is it told? And it's partly why I love Johnny Mercer. His lyrics are, you can't get better. And
oh gosh.
Yeah, sometimes I've had to kind of, if a theme is necessary, I have to try to find a theme. The theme is, I like what I like.
That's a pretty good theme. Well, you gave me a perfect segue mentioning Johnny Mercer. You've got a couple of, or 2 or 3 Mercer tunes on the album. But the album opens with Hit the Road to Dreamland, great Johnny Mercer lyric tune. So why don't we stop talking for a second and let folks listening to this hear some of your great music, hear what we've been talking about with your choice of material and that style. So here is Libby York with the great Johnny Mercer tune, Hit the Road to Dreamland, from her new album, Dreamland.
Bye-bye, baby. Time to hit the road to dreamland all night, baby. Dig you in the land of nod. Hold tight, baby. We'll be swinging up in dreamland all night, baby, where the little cherubs trod. Look at that knocked out moon, just a blowing his top in the blue. Never saw the likes of you. What an angel. Bye-bye, baby. Time to hit the road to dreamland all night, baby. but the rooster has finally crowed. Time to hit the road. Look at that knocked out moon, just a blow in his top in the blue. Never saw the likes of you. What an angel. Bye bye, baby. Time to hit the road to dreamland. All night, baby. It was divine, but the rooster has finally crowed. Time to hit the road. Sleep tight, baby. See you in my dreams. We'll be swinging up in dreamland.
That was Hit the Road to Dreamland by Libby York from her new album, Dreamland. What a great performance, Libby. That tune is such a beautiful tune. I love Johnny Mercer too. I mean, who doesn't? And especially the way you arrange that tune for, again, that tight, compact trio of voice, guitar, and bass. It really brings out the lullaby quality of the tune in my mind. And you know, I don't know about you, but I still like to listen to albums start to finish in sequence. And there's something about putting on a fresh CD, playing a fresh album, where that first track is the moment where I, as a listener, go like, okay, am I going to be okay? Is this going to be a good experience? And I got to tell you, as soon as I started to listen to Hit the Road to Dreamland, I'm like, yeah, we're going to be okay. I'm in good hands. You know, it sets the tone for the album so nicely.
Is, you know, a big part of creating a record, although now with streaming, so many songs are just pulled, unto themselves. But I enjoy, it's like creating the perfect set for a club, which I never like to do the same set twice. And just to create, the perfect, tempo change, key change, feeling change to create a good set, I find endlessly challenging and fascinating, depending on where you are. And I'm going to New York next week, and of course at Mesro, they know every song ever written, except for maybe a couple. So
right. Yeah, actually, let's take a minute and promote that. It's March 4th as we're recording this. I think you're going to be at Mesro in Manhattan on March 12th. Do I have that right?
Right.
Why don't you let people know other places, other times, because I know you're out on the road a little bit promoting this. Are there some other performances you can share with people coming up?
Yeah. Then April 20th in Chicago at Winter's Jazz Club, which is a beautiful listening room. And that is sponsored by WDCV Radio. So there'll be plenty of airplay. And that's with Pete Benson on piano, with a wonderful Clark Summers on bass. Love him dearly. and Eric Schneider on sax and clarinet. And we've all worked together quite a bit before, so I'm looking forward to that. That's April 20th, 420.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go. Popular date.
How many 420 jokes are we going to make? But anyway, it's April 20th in Chicago at Lucas Jazz Club.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to talk a little bit about the studio experience for you. The tunes all sound effortless. They sound like they could be perfect first take sort of club experiences. How much do you work and rework material when you're recording? Do you do a lot of takes? Do you try and avoid editing anything? You're looking only for single takes. Talk a little bit about the behind the scenes process.
Yeah. I don't think we ever did more than maybe 3 takes of any of these tunes. The take we chose was the first one, because you want to get the feeling. I learned that early on. You keep it's got the feeling. But I'm not opposed to occasionally fixing something if it's needs fixing. We had a wonderful engineer, Corey DeRucia, at Troubadour Studios in East Lansing. And some of the mixing and mastering we did via Zoom. I was down here in the West, is in Michigan, and at 3 minutes, 2 seconds, there's a glitch or something,
Right.
And, I like that about recording, that you can fix something if you want to, but try not to do a whole lot of that, because you don't want to make it too, you want to keep the original vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it definitely feels very authentic and very in the moment. I should mention to folks that Dreamland is available directly from Libby at libbyyork.com. And you can also find it on Amazon and Bandcamp and pretty much everywhere else you buy, download, or stream your music. And I'm going to get on my soapbox for a moment and ask people, please, to consider buying instead of streaming. It varies from platform to platform, but it takes as many as 1,000 streams for a musician to earn $1. So if you'd like the music you love to thrive and for there to be more of it from the artists that you are enjoying, please buy their music. So end of soapbox.
Bandcamp is into a good outlet for that, to buy the whole physical CD.
Absolutely.
I hadn't used Bandcamp before, but it's a way to basically buy directly from the artist,
Yeah, I'm a fan. I think it's a really great thing for the artist community. A little bit of a off music topic, but related. My dad was a watercolorist, and the painting on the cover of Dreamland really caught my eye. I think it's a beautiful piece. Is there any backstory to that art, where it came from and why you chose it?
Absolutely. It's painted by my friend Susan Sugar. You can find her website. I think it's just susansugar.com. Beautiful artist. She lives in New York part of the year and Key West part of the year. As soon as I realized I wanted to call the record Dreamland, the first thing that popped into my head, this is perfect for a Susan Sugar painting. So I just
nice.
To her, and she said, I've always wanted to have my work on a CD cover, and I'd love to offer it to you to use. And then John Bishop, who is head of Origin Records, I should mention this is on the Origin record label, is also the graphic designer. So he created what I think is a beautiful, panels of artwork, layout, and used Susan's painting for the cover. So I'm glad you like that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's the whole work becomes a sort of a single artistic expression, and I'm a fan of that. Let's go back in time a little bit. You were raised in Chicago. I believe both your parents were musical, but talk a little bit about your early influences, maybe what you recall first hearing. Was there a moment when you decided you wanted to sing? Did you study? What were the early days and early influences for you?
Yeah, definitely heard a lot of music in the house. My folks loved Sinatra and Perry Como, and
Sure.
they both were graduates of Northwestern, and my dad actually wrote a nightlife column for the Purple Parrot, which was the Northwestern paper. And I still have some of them. It's great where he would go all these rooms in Chicago that had the big bands. And
Oh, wow.
the family story was that Bob Crosby's Big Noise from Winnetka was about my dad. Because he was.
Oh, is that right?
And I'm sure scotches, there was a big noise going on probably during the music. But he had a wonderful voice and would occasionally sit in with some of the bands that came through. My mom was a wonderful singer too. They both played piano and sang. But, you know, as a kid, you just kind of take that for granted. This was part of life in our home. And I was always in the, in the school plays and in the choir. But it took me a while to catch up with the idea that you could actually try to make this a career,
Yeah.
So as you say, I started a restaurant, the Back Porch Cafe in Rehoboth Beach, which is still there in Delaware.
No kidding. I love that.
Because I think, restaurants, that's kind of like showbiz, but then.
Did you change your opinion of that at some point?
Well, it can be. And I loved the process of creating this beautiful space that really is just like it was when we first started. We were offering farm to table food, like when Alice Waters was creating Shape.
Oh, yeah.
In that same era. But it was wonderful creating it. And now when I go back, the founder, one of the founders of the Back Porch.
That's exciting.
But the day-to-day drone of working a restaurant was just not for me. I did it 5 years. And then luckily one of our people we were working with took it over for many years. And it was just recently sold to another employee. So it's kind of been a direct line of people who are real familiar with it. And
okay.
So there was great experience. And but yeah, after 5 years, I was already taking the bus from Rehoboth Beach up to New York to try to be a singer,
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, those 17-hour restaurant days, I imagine, made that hard to do. I've never worked in that environment, but every indication is it's one of the most brutal careers you can have.
Very hard work, and to be consistent, it's difficult. But it does provide, I like the idea that you're creating this whole little world.
Yeah.
Where people feel good, and that's true of a good restaurant,
Yeah. So you were taking the bus to New York to try and break in. What were some of your first experiences like? How did you go about the process of saying, "Hey, Manhattan, I'm here and I'm ready to sing"?
It's funny. I sat in with a really great guitar player who's still a friend, Franklin McCare, who was playing down here in Key West at the Pier House. And he invited me to sit in with him, which I did. I remember one of the songs was Cole Porter's Night and Day. And he said, great. If you ever want to sit in with me at my gig in the Village, you're welcome. Well, that's all I had to hear. I had a sublet on the Upper West Side for the summer, that kind of fell into my lap. And I did some workshops, and I was already, on the bandstand working. I'm probably one of the last era of musician who didn't go to a jazz program in college,
Right. Right. Yeah.
Those exist now, but that wasn't around then. So I did the majority of my learning on the bandstand, and then had to circle back. And when you're using your voice regularly, and there's a lot to learn about performing. And Franklin and I auditioned for a club in the West Village called Horn of Plenty, and much to our surprise, we got the gig, and we had about 6 to our repertoire. So then we had to woodshed and develop an act, So
right.
Then after that, this is New York in the 80s. I was there till the early 90s. And I sent in my cassette tape to an ad in the Village Voice for a big band singer, and got gig, and that was Swing Street. It's a great trumpet player, Barry Bryson's band, and got to work with some great musicians. And you just keep going and learning as you go.
Right. Yeah. And each thing leads to the next. The New York in the 80s, that was a gritty time. That was before it really kind of got a little bit more cleaned up, as I understand it.
Yeah, it was a little gritty. But then as kind of, I think the late 80s, then Wall Street was suddenly booming, and
Yeah.
We'd play parties and dances and gigs around town. And people had said that Manhattan, right after the pandemic, reminded them of the 80s because it was a little funky and places
Yeah.
were closed. And but I think now it's kind of come out of that.
Yeah. I moved to New York in 2004, lived there for 4 years. And I remember talking to longtime residents and natives and saying how much I loved it. Now it didn't feel threatening at all. And it was surprisingly clean. They're like, well, yeah, you're here now, man. You should have been here 20 years ago.
Yeah. Just at times the subway is always like the proving ground. How bad is it today?
Well, let's shift gears from times and places to some other people. Do I recall correctly? I seem to recall you telling me a story when we were hanging out about getting a chance to sing with Leonard Bernstein at a party once. Do I have that right?
You have that right. It's remarkable. A friend here in Key West who had a wonderful restaurant called Antonia's, which is still there. They're in Italy now, so Antonia and Philip. She was Italian and had befriended Lenny at the opera in Rome.
Lenny.
Got a call one night. Lenny's here for dinner. Would you like to come over? I said, yes, I would love to come over. And so after dinner, we were drinking grappa, as I recall. And he knew I was. And he said, Libby, let's go to the piano and play some blues. And
oh my gosh.
because he was a bit of a wild child. This was maybe only 3 years before he passed. And I still remember seeing him. I did Billie Holiday's Fine and Mellow. He knew any singer.
Oh, nice.
Blues. And I just remember,
Sure.
I was standing, he was sitting at the piano. His face was like, to give a contemporary analogy, it was like Yoda, it's like this singing the face. And it wasn't until later I thought, holy cow, I just sang the blues with Leonard Bernstein. Yeah, only in Key West would I have met him, no doubt. And
oh my gosh,
it was really remarkable.
That's amazing. That's one of the cool things about a career in this space is you never know what opportunities will arise and which paths will cross. I'm curious, if there are other memories, of just happenstance that really stand out for you. But I'm even more curious what memories you still hope to make, because things are opening back up. You've got this new album out. You're clearly utterly engaged and enjoying your music. Well, what does the future look like for you? What more memories do you want to make?
Well, I'm actually looking for an apartment in the New York area again, just to kind of make that my city. I love traveling and being in less urban spots as well. But when I go up there next week, I'm kind of looking around and I just want to keep going, keep working with the best people I can possibly work with, because that's how I get better. And I love the fact that the jazz community respects their elders. And I mean, Sheila Jordan is still singing at 90 something. Marilyn May is still singing. As long as the voice holds out, and I can make the gig, I want to keep going.
Right. Right.
I'd love to travel. I'm hoping we can hook something up in California, and
I love it.
Paris,
Yeah. Well, that's what more can a person ask for? it's wonderful that we can talk about live gigs again. I want to remind people you're going to be at Mesro on the 12th, and you've got some other things coming up after that. I just want to thank you for the time to chat, Libby. We've covered some interesting ground. Is there anything else you want people to know about the album, or anything else that you want to promote about it?
Oh, well, just stay in touch on LibbyYork.com or Facebook or Instagram. And, it's always nice to stay in touch. And I love getting my Apple Music map of the world every Friday. And we talked about this, all the continents and cities and places the music is being streamed. Yeah, it doesn't amount to money, but it's fascinating. This is really the first album I've made since streaming was the norm. And, India, you just wonder, how did they get a hold of it?
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Somebody in Helsinki listened to that one track 12 times. Okay, that's great.
25 or 30 plays, and there's one listener, you got one person that really digs it.
You've got a true fan. Well, I suspect we've created some new Libby York fans with our conversation today. And for those of you listening, if that's you, be sure to learn more about Libby at LibbyYork.com. You can buy her new album, Dreamland, there and wherever else you buy your music. Libby, thanks so much. It's always a treat to spend time with you, and I can't wait to do it again sometime.
Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure.